future enemies. Army is a combination of angiotensin 2 receptor blocker, valsartan, and a nebulizer inhibitor sacubitril. Army is a proven drug to reduce mortality in heart failure and to reduce hospitalization in the heart failure in patients with heart failure and NYHA class 2 and 3 symptoms. These benefits are over and above the benefits offered by the ACE inhibitor. To discuss about this important molecule, we have with us none other than Dr. Viveka Kumar, who is one of us and needs no introduction. Dr. Viveka Kumar is one of the best interventional cardiologists in India. He is the Vice Chairman and Chief of Cath Lab, Penn Max Cardiac Sciences, Max Hospital. He is an excellent cardiologist with a human touch. He is always ready to help members of Physicians Forum India. He is a very patient-friendly doctor. I invite Dr. Viveka Kumar to give his pearls of wisdom to us.
So good evening, friends. First of all, happy New Year to you all. So I think in 2025, things will be much more, pleasant for all of you and us, and especially, the Physicians Forum of India, which will get into the more. So I think this CME was supposed to be for the first time in my life, and seeing that, people always look forward for Good Fridays, but on Fridays, but this is a day where we say that Friday is a Wednesday because it is Physician Forum. So today is Wednesday, forget that it is Friday. So go into Wednesday mode, and then we will be discussing about the Army today, and we know that Army has been propagated, especially NEFTAS. I would thank Mayank and the team for from Mankind giving them for stitching this CME together. So Army has many other potential advantages apart from the heart failure. So we'll look into the newer paradigm shift into the management of different other diseases, which is more than heart failure. So if you look at the different spectrum of heart failure where the Army can be given in patients who have got heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, heart failure with mid-range ejection fraction, heart failure with reserved ejection fraction also. So all the spectrum of heart failure can be given. Now the newer avenues where the Army can be given is so Dr. Chauhan says that you can hide the pleasant things so that because they will be taking a photograph, so you can hide your glasses. Yeah, so because they will have to take a photograph. So if you look at the other newer indication where Army has been being demonstrated and a lot of data now is that Army as an ACE inhibitor in hypertension, Army in cardiorenal syndrome, Army on ventricular arrhythmias, and glucose hemostasis and other ones as well. So we'll be briefly looking at that. So if you look at the history of Army, it started with patients who have increased frequency of acute events and disease progression linked to high rate of hospitalization. And heart failure is something which is a big problem. So it starts as a baseline of the patients when they have got class 1, then they go into class 2 heart failure, and then class 3 and class 4. So we did not have any molecule other than the beta blocker and the ACE inhibitor, and that too, the awareness about the heart failure was not as much as we have today. So the advanced heart failure is something which is more serious than the cancer. The people having more than 50% of the people will die within 2 years compared to cancer where they can live for many years on chemotherapy. So that's the problem. So Army came as a big awareness. So if you look at the pathophysiology, there is a lot of adverse things which is going on in myocardial injury. When we patients who would have more sympathetic overactivity, RAS activation will be more, endothelial levels, endothelin levels will go up, and and ANP and BNP levels go up, and the cytokine levels will also go up. So the congestive heart failure is something where the progressive pump failure is there, and symptom is congestion. So there will be symptoms of fluid accumulation. And the most painful thing is that the sudden cardiac death will be there, and that's the problem is that even in people who are in class 2 or class 3, they will have maximum burden of sudden cardiac death in heart failure. This is something which has not been really emphasized. So people would say that he was not very symptomatic but died suddenly. So this is something where we can change the outcome by giving appropriate treatment. So augmentation of NPs as therapeutic strategy in heart failure and emergence of combination of sacubitril valsartan. So if you see since 1980s, there has been trial and the attempt to combine, because the ACE inhibitor had a best outcome in heart failure patients. So they tried to combine the neprilysin inhibitor, but the problem was that it was not safe. A lot of patients would get into angioedema, and that is why when we change the patient from ACE inhibitors to ARNI, we always say that give a window to washout time of 36 hours at least, so that the angioedema does not happen. So then the good combination of neprilysin inhibition and ARB, which was most studied in heart failure, was valsartan, came in, and then we had a heart failure trial of Paradigm-HF, and that really changed the whole outlook of heart failure patients. So the RAS inhibition and neprilysin inhibition system would combine to decrease the blood pressure, sympathetic tone goes down, the aldosterone goes down, fibrosis goes down, hypertrophy goes down. So in turn, all the adverse events would improve over the period of time, and that is why a lot of patients would have improved survival. So look at the data which was from Paradigm-HF data that shows that the primary endpoint of cardiovascular death and heart failure hospitalization with the ARNI was not compared with placebo, but the standard of care, that is the patient were on best available treatment plus enalapril. When you change the enalapril to sacubitril valsartan, the patient had improved outcome, and there was 20% relative risk reduction over 27 months in patients who have had the endpoint of cardiovascular death and heart failure. So when you look at the same data, cardiovascular death was again significantly lower in RP group compared to the enalapril group. You can see here and then all-cause mortality was also significantly lower when you compare the enalapril group compared to the RP, and that was statistically quite significant. So it means that Paradigm-HF clearly showed that the RP, that is combination of sacubitril valsartan, consistently in all across the subgroups. So whether the patient had hypertension, the patient had low eGFR, patient who was elderly or younger patients, or patients who had got very high NT-proBNP or not so high NT-proBNP. So on all these group of patients, there was significant improvement in quality of life and also improvement in the survival. So Paradigm-HF data clearly showed that the improvement continued to be there over a period of time. So it started in less than 3 months and improved. So if you look at the hazard ratio, within 3 to 6 months there was significant improvement. It means that a patient with recent heart failure decompensation requiring hospitalization were more likely to experience cardiovascular death or heart failure hospitalization than those who had never been hospitalized. And these the patients would have remarkable response to RNI. So reverse cardiac remodeling with RNI is there. So if the patient who, and whatever the ejection fraction G at the baseline, 25% of the patients experienced an LVF increase of more than 13 to 15% at 1 year. So it means that there are a lot of patients where not only the symptomatic benefit will be there, but the ejection fraction will also improve. And also the data from Paradigm-HF which show that the systolic and diastolic volume continue to decrease over the period of time, which is like a positive remodeling. So reversal of the cardiac remodeling impact of different therapeutic interventions. So when you compare how much the 4 pillars of the heart failure like SGLT2 inhibitor, CRT, mitral clip, which is expensive therapy, MRA, beta blocker and all would bring in, you can have a comparative statement that the maximum treatment is with the army. And then of course the CRT and mitagliptin would have. So now we have ushered into an era where we do give mitagliptin treatment to our patients who have not responded to this level. Then obviously the outcomes are much better. So it is a combination of what we call teamwork, where the patient can be saved when you give all these treatments. So when we look at the final HF data, that also looks at its effect on composite of heart failure death, arterial readmissions, left ventricular assist device, and listing for the cardiac transplant. You can see that the listing for the cardiac transplant also came down significantly when you give patients RT on top of the standard of care. It means that this is something where, so in our experience also, the patient needing heart transplant came down significantly. So early impact of RT on patients' quality of life, also this data clearly showed that that was significantly better. So 20% experiencing a very large health status benefit as compared to patients who were not on RT. And then patients who in hospitalized patients, whether we should be starting RT or not, we got the answer from Pioneer HF data. This was nearly 1,000 patient data, which clearly showed that it is safe to start de novo in RT in patients who are never been on and advised RT during their admission. And transmission HF, which was again nearly 1,000 patient data, that also showed that there was no significant difference in worsening of renal function, hyperkalemia, the symptomatic hypotension and angioedema when you give these patients secondary valsartan prior to discharge. So based on these data, now there is a guideline, whether we look at the ACC AHA guideline or even the European Society Cardiology guideline, that RT is something which is class 1 recommendation for patients who have got heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. So much so that the patient who are stable on RT or ACE inhibitor, they are also shifting them from ACE inhibitor and RB to ACE inhibitor and ARB to RB is recommended. So it means that patients who have other pillars of heart failure treatment, we must try time and again to give RB to get a better outcome. So in heart failure with mid-range ejection fraction, so mid-range ejection fraction is something like patients who have got ejection fraction 41% to 49%, and they also behave similar to heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. So the four pillars of heart failure treatment, that is SGLT2 inhibitor, ACE inhibitor, RB or ARB, MRA, these things should be given to all these patients to improve the outcome. So the new recommendation in heart failure with reserved ejection fraction, again RB did show some benefit, though it was not statistically hugely significant because it got counterbalanced because of the adverse less beneficial effect in patients who were males, but overall it did good. So I think apart from RB, the other two molecules for HFpEF was MRA and the SGLT2 inhibitor, which really showed to improve the outcome. So these are the things. Then the data has to be seen that it was natural corollary that the patient who have got preserved ejection fraction with heart failure, there the most common cause is hypertension. So should we give RB in hypertension patients? Then the data was quite compelling, and it is already approved in Japan and China and Germany also, and that is why the ESC hypertension guidelines 2023 recommended RB for hypertension with heart failure. So any patient who has got hypertension you are treating and has got a diagnosis what we call preserved ejection fraction heart failure or heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, there we must be giving this. So control of blood pressure with RB is multifold. So there will be sodium accretion, and there will be RAS system, vasoconstriction, heart rate control, hypertrophic fibrosis, and endothelial permeability. So all these things will be positively affected by RB. So this is the data which was more than nearly 1,500 patients from panel that clearly showed that efficacy and safety of RB was quite good. It is a Chinese paper, and that is why based on this they said that the patients who are hypertensive standalone, there are also RB is much better molecule. and even in resistant hypertension, ARNI has been recommended in those countries. So ARNI's effect of reducing the blood pressure in Asian patients with hypertension is also quite good. So you can see there was significant reduction in that. So in Asian subsets also, based on this paper, it's been recommended that once the patient has got resistant hypertension, it's better to try ARNI. And this paper, which was published in Lancet, that was again nearly 1,500 patients, that clearly showed that when you give the ARNI input for the patients with hypertension alone, there is a sustained 24-hour effect, and we know that the sustained effect is very, very important to decrease the adverse events in these patients. And there was significantly lower 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure in ARNI 200 milligrams twice a day when you compare with the valsartan 160 milligrams. It means that this is quite effective in hypertension, and also decrease in sitting pulse pressure, which is again an important marker for decreasing the adverse event. So decrease in ambulatory blood pressure. So no wonder that the European Society of Hypertension guidelines 2023 has suggested that the BP lowering drugs in hypertension and heart failure, we should be preferring ARNI with diuretics, and then of course the combination of SGLT2 inhibitor and MRA should be there in our prescription. Then another thing which is a concomitant thing is that the cardiorenal syndrome. So ARNI on cardiorenal syndrome, we know that a lot of our patients would have some decreased renal function, and then that would also adversely affect the cardiac outcome because of fluid retention and all those things. So in this situation, the ARNI not only improves the cardiac function, but also it is beneficiary effect on renal outcomes as well. So the patient who has got heart failure with renal class stage 2, 3 and 4 diseases there. So unless the patient goes on dialysis, we can always give this molecule so that the outcome renal function also improves. So ARNI provides several renal benefits both in terms of function and adaptation, and also this structural remodeling. So that is why we in our practice now we give ARNI even in patients who have got advanced renal disease as well. The composite of renal endpoint, you can see the paradigm HF subgroup analysis, that also clearly showed that the proportion of the patients who did better because of renal death and reaching the end stage renal disease was significantly lower in patients who were on ARNI compared to other inhibitors or ARBs. So that is why the clinical application of ARNI in the treatment of heart and kidney disease is something which is really recommended that we should be giving in cardiorenal syndrome as well. One thing which was very powerful observation was that patients in heart failure paradigm HF data, those patients who have had a low ejection fraction, sudden cardiac death in the group which was on ARNI was significantly lesser compared to the patients who were not on ARNI. And also those patients who were given, because standard of care was to be given all the patients, so ICD shocks were significantly lesser. So statistically significant less number of ICD shocks were there in patients who were on ARNI than those patients who were not ARNI. It means that it had a significant anti-arrhythmic effect as well. So that is the reason why patients' sudden cardiac death was also significantly lower. So it means that we should be giving ARNI at an earlier stage in patients who have got a heart failure stage 2 or stage 3 rather than waiting for stage 4, and it will decrease the risk of sudden cardiac death. And also when you look at the ARNI in diabetic patients, a lot of people here in the group practice diabetology. So there also it did show that it marginally decrease the sugar as well. So not only neutral, but it has got a positive effect on the glucose regulation, and the beneficial effect of this ARNI molecule was shown. And this is again a data where the glycemic control this was published in circulation reports, 150 patient data, and that also showed that there was marginal decrease in HbA1c levels. So it means that it is something which should be given in patients who are diabetic as well. So not only NT-proBNP, blood pressure reduction, but also so most of the metabolic factors which we desire in our patients was achieved by giving ARNI in this group of patients. So patients who are diabetic, have got renal disease, hypertensive, heart failure. So these group of patients are ideal subset where the ARNI would have very, very good effect. So if you look at the future major ongoing results like with many wonderful molecules which have been discovered, like statins and all, in all subgroups of patients with acute cardiac syndrome, patients with hypertension, patients with infectious disease, patients who had a transplant, cognitive dysfunction, advanced heart failure, diabetes, or even in pediatric population who had a pediatric surgery. In all these groups, it was found that the effect positive outcomes of RP was far better than when you compare with placebo, compare with ACE inhibitor, or even compared with the ARP. So I think to conclude, I would say that the RP is something which is a wonderful molecule in McLast. It is a leading brand, the original molecule supplied by the research molecule manufacturers, and if you give this molecule to your patients, obviously you are doing a great service to them because you are decreasing certain cardiac death, you are decreasing the hospitalization, repeated hospitalization. Also, you are protecting the kidneys and protecting the diabetic outcome as well. So, thank you very much, and over to Dr. Anil, who is,
All of you will agree that it is a great academic piece today.
Open with Dr. Anil Gupta sir. He has to start the proceedings. Dr. Amish, can you please come here? Let's hear it for Dr. Amish Vora. What a wonderful conference you did. Really, honestly. You are going to parallel Dr. Viveka in a few years, let me tell you. As far as conferences are concerned, and more important that giving respect and affection to people is concerned. Let me tell you. Dr. Anil sir.
Everybody of you will agree that we had a great. Everybody will agree that we had a very great academic piece today, and all the knowledge we acquired today will come great way in our practice. Now the house is open for the questions, please.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you so much, sir, as always. First of all, I don't know if many people know, Dr. Viveka Kumar is one of the authors in the article which was published in June 2023 in the Cardiology Therapeutics, where there were 6 eminent cardiologists of India. They convened together 6 times and they came out with the guidelines of ARNI in heart failure. I think that deserves, sir ka jaise naam dekha, I was very happy.
Dr. Amish, I might just add, sir is a contributor to one of the books which has been edited by Dr. H.K. Chopra sir. Sir sent that book to me. I wanted to bring that book today. Unfortunately, I couldn't find that book. I would have kept it here. Next CME, sir की मैं वो किताब लेके आऊँगा. It's a beautiful compilation.
देखो सर की टीम से आज किसी ने बोला है सर आपको भी हम भेजेंगे, तो I'm waiting for that.
Of everything on heart failure.
So, sir, the question now is, in the same recommendation paper, you have said in a reduced ejection fraction, ARNI is class 1A recommendation. But in a HFpEF, when there is a preserved ejection fraction, you have put it as class 2B. Now I am confused because in the lecture you said we can use it ARNI class in HFpEF also. First of all, I don't understand as a non-card. आज भी मुझे definition of HFpEF नहीं समझ में आता है. Although the cardiologists say that this is HFpEF, but I couldn't find a proper definition of HFpEF. So where does ARNI stand in HFpEF? Because your paper says class 2B recommendation. Class 2B is like, so-so. And the second question is that in the, I think, paradigm trial, which you showed the first trial, 911 events happened in ARNI group also. Which are these patients where we should not give ARNI and we should look at other approaches?
Yes, I think first of all, the oncologist should not read cardiology. The definition of HFpEF and HFrEF, even it's easier said than to define. So, but if you look at the reality, HFpEF is something where you have to have a good echocardiography, where you need to have a diastolic dysfunction demonstrated, and then the anti-proBNP should be high.
How high?
So it should be at least more than twice the normal value for the age. And then third thing is that you need to show that the patient has got, symptomatic. So a lot of elderly HFpEF patients, they are landing with this pulmonologist because they feel that it is more of a COPD status and all. So if you have a combination, so till now as a cardiologist we were not focusing much on HFpEF because there wasn't anything to decrease the, improve the outcomes. So then ARNI was something which was quite helpful in some subset. It marginally missed the significant level. So statistical significance it missed, but it does benefit. So that is why we say that it can be. So now it has been delegated to 2A recommendation as far as and especially those patients who are hypertensive with HFpEF, we would be a real welcome thing. The other two molecules which have really changed the outcome in HFpEF is the patients who have molecules like SGLT2 inhibitors and MRA antagonists. So now we have got data from non-steroidal MRA, which is Fenrenon. So Fenrenon has really, especially obese HFpEF patient, Fenrenon is a wonderful drug because that has shown to improve the outcomes. And so that is about this. But patients, so today's purpose was that apart from the classical heart failure indications, we can go into the hypertensive patient, cardiorenal syndrome, and the patients who have so the combination of diabetic patient, hypertensive with HFpEF or HFrEF or have heart failure with mid-range ejection fraction, they would be the ideal candidate, and even those who have got renal dysfunction, they will be the ideal candidate to start them on ARNI to reap the benefit.
Sorry sir, again आप बोलोगे cardiologist, non-oncologist नहीं पढ़ना चाहिए, but NEJM articles which got the Fenrenon approval, the hazard ratio of 0.89. So as far as I know, hazard ratio of 0.89 is a very, very weak primary endpoint. Do you recommend that, given the cost of Fenrenon, do you recommend that we should use Fenrenon in global or only in a select group of people? And where does the hazard, because you showed the Forest Plot chart also.
So if you look at the fine art study, because the data came just 3 weeks back. So after the fine arts, I would say that yes, we must be using it in there. So you are talking about Fidello and So Fidello trial was not focused on the heart failure also, but if you look at the fine arts data, there it has come as a recommendation.
Dr. Mevakar sir, Dr. Sajid Parvez, batchmate, very keen academicians, 5 सवाल भेजे थे सर आपको, उनका जवाब अभी तक आया नहीं सर, आपको याद होगा मैंने भेजे हुए हैं।
No problem sir.
He said no problem, लेकिन मैं सर आपसे वो सवालों का जवाब लेके रहूँगा।
Sir, good evening sir and happy new year to everyone. Sir, बहुत छोटे से GP वाले सवाल हैं। Sir, एक तो जैसे पूछा था कि ARNI, when we should be careful in starting a person on ARNI when he is on so many other drugs also. एक सर छोटा सा और सवाल था कि ये diastolic and systolic जब हम heart failure वो करते हैं तो क्या anti-pro-BNP दोनों में अलग होता है या दोनों में हम सेम ही वो लेके चलते हैं?
No, so anti-pro-BNP is the same test, but the criteria of heart failure definition also remains the same. The diastolic heart failure was more of an echocardiographic diagnosis and diagnosis of exclusion. But when the biomarkers came, that really showed. So you need to have a really good echocardiographer where the grading of diastolic dysfunction is important to diagnose diastolic heart failure, and that is why I said that most of the patients would land up with pulmonologists for the breathing issues and all that. They will be treating like so inhalers and all would be given, but that is not going to be helpful. The problem was that the heart failure with preserved ejection fraction or diastolic dysfunction patients, there is a lot of continuum and overlap with patients who have got uncontrolled blood pressure and the other cause of relaxation abnormality. So even infiltrative heart disease like amyloidosis and all, they also behave like heart failure with preserved ejection fraction because the contractility and all would be same. Then the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is again a big group of heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. In fact, they have got a super ejection fraction because they are hypercontractile heart. So coming to your question is that anti-pro-BNP and also these are the markers which will improve when we do not have a good input from, the echocardiography, you will have a better outcome. So NT-proBNP has really been shown to improve, diagnose these patients, and then you need to look at the fluid accumulation symptoms and all. And then there is a diagnosis by trials. When you give them diuretics and deconnective therapy, they become remarkably well. And the other thing which is very, very important is that the prognosis of or the mortality because the heart failure with preserved ejection fraction is not very benign. It is also a killer disease, so we need to treat them. And only two molecules which are shown to improve the mortality marginally is SGLT2 inhibitor and MRA antagonists. And that is why I was talking about the non-steroidal MRA, which is Febrenon, which has shown to improve the outcomes.
Sir, Dr. Shireen ma'am has the question.
Sir, this is a gynecologist level of question. I have got a patient of PIH. After delivery, her BP was around 130/90. Then she shifted to Assam. Then after 3 years, she again called me. I'm having dyspnea. She was associating with the delivery problem. Then I asked her, what is your BP? Her BP was 140/100 around. And I asked her to go to the cardiologist, and she was diagnosed as a case of cardiac failure. So my question is, how long will be the untreated hypertension will lead to diastolic dysfunction, and how much will be the level of hypertension? Mild can also lead to diastolic dysfunction? Or
Yes, I think it's a combination of level of, the degree of hypertension, that is why we classify the hypertension into mild, moderate, severe, and then the accelerated hypertension and the malignant hypertension, where, nowadays in this weather in Delhi, we see a lot of patients coming with malignant hypertension, where you get more than 200 blood pressure and hypertrophy and all. So it doesn't take more than, half an hour or 1 hour to land patient from normal status to, heart failure. So that is one of the common cause of acute heart failure, which we call accelerated hypertension, which could be precipitated by weather, exposure to pollution, even consumption of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, steroids, or infections like, COVID kind of thing. So that has been shown to suddenly increase the blood pressure, the patient can go into accelerated hypertension and heart failure. But even if the patient has got a mild to moderate hypertension, it's a cumulative effect. The patient gets into left ventricular hypertrophy and then diastolic dysfunction. So these are slow and insidious process which will last for maybe 3 to 6 months, and over the years it will be there. So it is very important that, and that's the reason why if you decrease the blood pressure by 10 millimeters of mercury, you decrease the cardiovascular event by almost 2-fold. So that is the power of controlling the blood pressure. So I think the now recent data is saying that you should not have blood pressure control and be happy if it is less than 140. So the level to treat the blood pressure, what we call threshold to start the blood pressure is 140. But you should keep it so that there is a trial which has shown that if your blood pressure is less than 120, they do far better than patients where the blood pressure is from 120 to 140. So it means that controlling the blood pressure, lower the level, the better it is, because the afterload is decreased on the heart and they do much better.
Sir, Dr. Poddar sir has a question.
So, when we send many patients for pre-operative echo, PAC, so many times echo, they report grade 1 diastolic dysfunction. And other parameters are normal, ejection fraction is normal, they know ventricular hypertrophy, just left ventricular diastolic dysfunction. So, as a surgeon, what precautions should we take? Or we can advise to our anesthetist also. Anesthetist, what precautions should they take?
Yeah, so I think that's so a lot many people who come to me and say that, I'm really disturbed, I have got this disease, grade 1 diastolic dysfunction. So we always tell that is a very decent way of saying that you are more than 40 years of age. So up to grade 1 diastolic dysfunction is how God has made our body of aging. So after, to be honest, most of the data, almost 80 to 85% of people would have grade 1 diastolic dysfunction after the age of 30, because the relaxation of the heart is
impaired. And then if you get gastric dysfunction of grade 2 or more than that, then there will be disease state. So grade 1 you don't have to really worry. The other problem is that the echocardiographer is not really trained to calculate the EA ratio on echocardiography. They always look at the age of the patient and they find it mandatory to write on the echo that there is a grade 1 gastric dysfunction without measuring the ratio and all those things. So it's like, if they have not written, their seniors would say that the patient age is this and you have not written grade 1 gastric dysfunction. So grade 1 gastric dysfunction you don't have to worry at all. The moment they go into saying that the grade 2 gastric dysfunction or grade 3 gastric dysfunction, where there is a reversal of the flow and all, then obviously this is something which is a high degree of gastric dysfunction and we need to treat that.
If any patient sees this report, that grade 1 gastric dysfunction, if he wants to be sure that I want to go to a cardiologist, then I want to be sure there is no heart problem.
Yeah.
So what I can do?
So you can do anti-proBNP. If anti-proBNP is normal, we don't have to worry about that.
So just to be on safer side, anti-proBNP should be done. If it is normal, then nothing.
Yeah, so if you have got access to anti-proBNP or ANP, both of them can be done. Otherwise,
Above 40 is grade 1 diastolic dysfunction considered a normal to be echo?
yeah, that's right.
So then why should we do anti-protein?
No, so whether, because the grading, the person who has done the echocardiography, that is what I said, that is, it needs a lot of expertise to do a good echocardiography and grading with the gastric dysfunction. So you can correlate yourself that is the grading accurate or you need to do something more. So anti-proBNP is something which is a marker for, so you need to do an age correction for anti-proBNP and then.
Sir, Dr. Viveka sir, I want to tell everyone a real life situation. There is a patient of mine, I have been treating for last 16-17 years. Blood pressure remains 140/90, 150/100. ये तो नॉर्मल है. मुझे बहुत सारे डॉक्टरों ने बताया कि अभी तो गाइडलाइन चेंज हो गई है डॉक्टर साहब, आप पढ़ा करो. इको करवाया, ग्रेड 1 डायस्टोलिक डिस्फंक्शन था. सर, मैंने जो बंदा इको कर रहा था उससे बात की, जगह का नाम नहीं बताऊंगा, इस दिल्ली में मैंने उससे बात की. मैंने कहा भाई साहब ये जो डायस्टोलिक डिस्फंक्शन आपने ग्रेड 1 लिखा है, इसको आप अगर मैं पेशेंट को आपको भेजूं तो आप क्या उसको बोल सकते हो कि आपको डायस्टोलिक हार्ट फेलियर है? कहता हाँ बोल दूंगा. मैंने कहा कारण ये है कि पिछले 16 साल से मैं इसको कह रहा हूँ 150/100, 140/100 नॉर्मल ब्लड प्रेशर नहीं. कहता वो तो मैंने भी देखा ब्लड प्रेशर कम था, ब्लड प्रेशर नॉर्मल नहीं है. मैंने कहा मैं कल भेजता हूँ. मैंने कॉल किया, मैंने कहा आप एक काम करो, वो जो इको वाले डॉक्टर है ना वो कुछ क्लैरिफिकेशन करना चाह रहे हो, उनको कुछ चीज़ समझ में नहीं आई. अच्छा मैं कल जाती हूँ. वो गई तो उसने रिपीट एग्जामिनेशन किया, जो भी किया उसमें लिख दिया डायस्टोलिक हार्ट फेलियर. अगले दिन पेशेंट मेरे पास आ गई, भैया मुझे हार्ट फेलियर हो गया. मैंने दवाई लिखी और वो मुझे हर रोज ब्लड प्रेशर बताती है अपना कि मेरा ये ब्लड प्रेशर है. सर मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि जो ये नॉमेनक्लेचर है, हर रोज दवाई खा रही है, सर की दवाई बता रहे हैं, वही दवाई. सर ये जो डायस्टोलिक डिस्फंक्शन है, इसका नॉमेनक्लेचर अगर चेंज करके अगर डायस्टोलिक हार्ट फेलियर कर दिया जाए तो कोई प्रॉब्लम है? सर ये बताओ.
No, so I think you need to have a two component of diagnosing gastric heart failure. One is that you need to have a gastric dysfunction on echocardiography, the patient's symptoms, fluid retention, breathlessness, and the third thing is that the anti-proBNP should be taken. So then only you have to call it. So if you look at the gastric heart failure trials, where it has been shown to have combination, so you cannot diagnose by the gastric dysfunction may be there, but it may not be equivalent to heart failure.
Sir, I want to ask your opinion on something which we see very, very often. It is something like we see on an ultrasound abdomen, fatty liver. Something on echo we see concentric LVH. सर उसके मायने क्या है, उसका क्या इंटरप्रिटेशन है और उसकी आगे इन्वेस्टिगेशन कैसे करनी चाहिए?
So the concentric categories is something which is more of patients who are on who have hypertension for many years. So it is like a response to afterload. So if the afterload is high, it means that the patient has got high blood pressure, or if the patient has got moderate or severe aortic stenosis, or patient has got recalcitrant reason like mitral regurgitation and all. And so in the era when there was no color doctor available, people would miss the mitral regurgitation or aortic regurgitation, and in those situations we have left ventricular hypertrophy. So the way to diagnose was that the patient has got eccentric left ventricular hypertrophy, means apical hypertrophy, but not the basal and the lateral wall. It means that it is because of the volume overload. This is because the aortic regurgitation or mitral regurgitation. But if it is concentric hypertrophy, then afterload has to be very high, either in aortic stenosis or the patient has got chronically uncontrolled hypertension.
Sir, I wanted to ask you regarding the usage of RD in patients with severe renal disease. Suppose the EGFR is in the range of 15 to 30. Is there any special precaution that you take regarding introduction of RD in a patient of congestive heart failure?
Yeah, so I think we need to start with the lower dose, of course, and then monitor in a week's time the EGFR or the creatinine and all. Then if it is rising, so there are many times where we need to stop RD, like couple of days back also we have to stop because creatinine jumped from baseline of 2 to 5. So there are certain patients where it can suddenly go up. So we need to be careful in them because they'll have high creatinine related retention.
Sir, RD increases ejection fraction? Does it improve ejection fraction?
Yes, sir. That's what we showed, that the average improvement in ejection fraction HF data was almost 13 to with a standard deviation of 6%, so almost 15 to 20% improvement.
Does it increase EGFR?
So it has shown to, I would put it this way, that the progression to end stage renal disease is delayed by 10 years.
So almost the same effect as SGLT2 inhibitors. Okay, I would.
Along with this question, how often you should go for KFT test?
So when the baseline renal disease is there, then you need to look at after 1 week, and if it is stable, then once in 3 months.
When is the potassium level actually?
Potassium and the EGFR.
Sir, Dr. Dulci, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Chavan. So once again, what a wonderful talk by Dr. Viveka. So, sir, can I ask you, so are ARNIs superior to A's and ARBs in preventing heart failure, in preventing heart failure hospitalizations, in preventing cardiovascular mortalities? What do you say, sir? Superior to ARBs and A's?
Yeah, so that is why it has come in the guidelines also, that we should switch them, patients, even if they are stable, we should switch them to RD. If they are stable on this inhibitor or ARBs, we should switch them to RD.
So why is there a clinical inertia, amongst all of us here to write ARNIs in place of A's or ARBs, at least in prevention of heart failure or heart failure hospitalizations or cardiovascular mortality? What is the inertia, sir?
I think there is, the inertia of lack of initiation, lack of knowledge, or lack of the other, which was most important during recent days, was the cost was high. The ARNI was a much costlier molecule than but now with the class and all these molecules which are cheaper, I think probably it will be much more easily in them.
So superior to friends, A's and ARBs because it reduces fibrosis, it suppresses ventricular arrhythmias, it reverses electrical and structural remodeling caused by heart failure. So, Dr. Viveka, the paradigm heart failure study, as we know, had at least 99% of the people or patients who were
on, they had reduced ejection fraction, but they were in class 2 to 3. Hardly 1% of the patients were in class 4. Dr. Sinha, can we have your attention, please? So, can we say this probably with a, shall I say, in class 4 or in very advanced heart failure, this neproselin inhibitors probably do not have any more benefits as compared to the ACE or ARB, because the natriuretic peptidase blunting is there with neproselin inhibitors. Understand?
Yeah, so I think stage 4 is something like we have already lost the battle. So that it doesn't do much.
Doesn't benefit.
So when we look at even the intervention trials like CRTs or ICDs, the reduction in sudden cardiac death or pump failure deaths are hardly reduced, but maximum benefit is in class 2 and class 3. The only intervention which improves the outcomes in stage 4 heart failure or in stage heart failure is left ventricular assist device or heart transplant. So I think that is something where you change the pump and the outcome will improve.
In acute decompensated heart failure, I'm referring to the pioneer heart failure as compared to the enalapril, superior benefits, reduced BNP levels were seen in RNAs as compared to the enalapril. Sir, in acute decompensated heart failure.
Yeah, so now we have the data from trials, pioneer HF and all, which show that ADHF also we can use RNA, and it has the significantly improved outcome compared to the ACE inhibitor. It's not hugely different, but it's not deleterious either. So we can start there and take it down on long-term basis.
So my last question would be regarding some concerns today regarding RNAs causing beta amyloid deposits. See, in the brain causing Alzheimer's disease, in the eyes causing macular degenerations. Any concerns?
Yes, I think if you look at the real world data, it has not really shown to have that kind of major adverse event. So I would say it's just a small, volume.
So small observation studies did say about that. And finally, what about the neproselin inhibition causing obesity and glucose intolerance, insulin resistance also seen, lipid probably also seen. Some observation studies have talked about that.
But the larger ones which we showed that
Beneficial effects, you say.
even as HbA1c comes down, when all the other parameters are from 6.59 to 6.4, so it means that it is neutral on that front.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, before I give it to my respected Dr. M.L. Parva sir, veteran of the forum, Dr. S.K. Mathur sir has a question.
Sir, good evening. Thank you very much for lovely talk, sir. Sir, the routine practice we have a lot of patients, like say anti-thyroid, hypothyroid, they are diabetes and hypertension. These patients are on various drugs, SGLT2 inhibitor plus all anti-hypertensive. But the blood pressure is not coming to a desirable level. So the glycemic level is maintained, thyroid is maintained, and they do complain of breathlessness often. That can be not classified, never got echocardiography surgery. Should we change over them to RNA at that level?
Yes, if you look
Without
at
referring to you, sir.
if you look at the treatment for the resistant hypertension, because as I said that the outcomes are better if you bring down the blood pressure systolic to less than 130 or more specifically less than 100, and actually to less than 90 for sure. So we need to stick to the RNA where the outcomes are much better.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Brijender Singh has a question. He had promised me he will ask a question today.
Good evening, sir. Happy New Year to you and all. There was a study done by a Scots people more than a decade ago that more than half of the heart surgeries could have been avoided had the BP been in normal range. Does it hold true even now, or you want to better this statement?
Yes, I think the blood pressure and diabetes we consider as the mother of cardiovascular diseases because these are the two biggest risk factors. If you decrease the blood pressure level, myocardial infarction, brain stroke and all those things come down significantly. So you're right that controlling the blood pressure and controlling the sugar would be the two biggest intervention if you want to decrease the intervention, surgical or whatever you want to say.
Sir, Dr. Jitendra Saxena, our friend and our guide on pollution in Delhi, has a question.
So my question is from GP's perspective, sir. Patient in which we are seeing lots of such patients comes with cough. Comes with shortness of breath. No cough, no fever. X-ray, chest is normal. You suspect that there could be some element of heart failure. You send the patient for echo. Just simple grade 1, as you said, above 40. It's a way of saying that you are above normal and you could have grade 1 diastolic